One of the cool things we get to do in the studio from time to time is go live on national television. So today we thought it'd be cool to talk about our experience going live on CNN. So let's get started. Welcome to the Debrief.
Okay, unless you were living under a rock, you saw that ship hit that bridge in Baltimore. And here in Chattanooga, we have the former chairman of the board of the NTSB.
National Transportation Safety Board.
Jim, and what was his last name?
Hall.
Jim Hall. So Jim Hall lives here on Signal Mountain, and they wanted him to go live on CNN. And we are privileged to have the technology of LTN and the brain of a Morgan Hugh who can make all of this happen for us. So we got to go live on, what time did we go live?
It was 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it was 10 p.m.,
that night.
which will be a key part of what we talk about because it seems to always happen in the evening for us, which is not a complaint, just saying that. But yeah, I'll pass it off to Andre or Isaac, and we can start talking about all of the intricacies of what we do.
Sure, I'll jump in. So Mr. Hall was awesome. This is not his first rodeo. He's done this quite a bit in the past, and so that was cool. Two things, though. He's older, and so and it's nighttime. And so that was certainly something that I looked at our entire studio through this very different lens of how are all the ways that you can fall and get hurt. And that's when I discovered everything in our studio is made out of metal or concrete. I'm like, oh gosh, if he falls right there, oh man. So he was steady. He was totally steady on his feet and everything, but it just, you just have an extra awareness with someone that's older. And so there's a number of things that I thought from, let's just call it OSHA, from an OSHA perspective of like, man, there's some things we could do differently in the studio, even from just like there's kind of a threshold when you walk into the studio, for kind of sound absorbing the door when it's closed and other things like that. It was just like, oh man, there's a lot of things that I just need to make sure and point out on our path there. And even to things like the size of the table and the height of the chair, we opted for like a little bit of a standing table, bar stool type of chair. In retrospect, probably should have done like a lower seating. I'm not really sure why we ended up going that path, but that's just the direction we had stuck in there. It was kind of a last minute thing. And we're like, I think because we were filming something else and it was going to be standing. And so that's why we had that kind of set up that way. But anyway, those were some safety concerns. And, we take that really seriously. And so we just kind of stood close while he was walking to just be around him. Again, he was totally steady on his feet and everything. It was just one of those things where you look at it through a little different lens. And even outside, like getting to the car and out of the car, it was just like, oh, right, we should probably think through nighttime lighting, or maybe we should probably not pay much attention because we don't want to do a ton of 10 p.m. shoots. But yeah, he was awesome. He was great. All right, so here we are inside the studio. Here's Mr. Hall and Mr. Buchanan. And so here you can see him on set. So we've already got him seated. We went ahead and just threw a white tablecloth on top of the table just to create a little bit of a bounce coming up. And so here you can see kind of coming into the studio, he could see himself. We have 4 large 77-inch OLEDs that you can see there. So we could see that CNN supplies the background. And I, as you're looking at this, I want to see, does anyone notice anything about Mr. Hall that maybe could be a challenge for us in the studio?
I know.
His
tie is green.
His tie is green. There, look at that. He wore a green tie. What am I going to do? Look how see-through it was on that combined mat. So we had to figure out what to do. So at first, I didn't notice that he had a green tie. There were so many things happening. I just sat him down and I got in to start doing the keying, and I'm like, why does his tie look weird? What's going on? It must be some weird shiny thing. Oh, it's green. So here's what we did to solve that. And I don't know if we can see kind of a finished shot.
Yeah, I have a after.
Great. Yeah. So you can see I obviously took the green out of his tie. So what I did is I decided, because one option would be to create a holdout mat. And I could just say like, hey, don't key this section. But instead, I went a different path, and I just created a dark navy blue blob that's just blurred on the edge that just covered his middle section there. So if this mic was the tie, it's just covering this part right here in blue.
Behind
and
him.
So that way, behind him.
Yep.
So as he moved, you would just see this solid color. And once we did that, then you don't see all the texture of the dots. I don't know if we can bring it back up to show what the background.
I was trying to get the actual background we ended up doing.
Yeah.
So here's just the pure background.
So that background.
And what we added on top.
Oh, great. Yeah, so there's the blur. So I just did a blue and then just had it fade to transparent, right, where it's black. And so by putting that on top, what we were able to do is just create this blue center section that just slowly diffused out as it went away. And then that made it where, because he wasn't going to do a ton of movement anyway, but any shifting or anything like that, it would still just show a solid color through. And by showing the solid color, it made the tie look like it was totally fine. So that's how we solved that. So that was fun. And then one other thing that I did different on this one is I typically tend to crush the blacks a little bit and bring up the highlights a little bit more. But I've noticed on national television, it seems it's definitely being run through some other processes, right? So it seems to do that a lot on their side, and I've been a little unhappy and always felt like, oh man, my stuff looks a little darker. And so yeah, here you go. So now we can see side by side, this is the actual shot that we had after it's been unfortunately down-res to 1080i and been sent across. But that's, I think we ended up with a much better, maybe I would have tweaked it just a little and made the blacks just a little crushed on that, just a little bit more to kind of match her just a little better. But overall, I think it did okay. So I think it felt pretty good. The other thing that's interesting, and this is just the nature of the background they gave us, but her background is a little more blur. It's a little more bokeh on the back end. And the one that they gave us is a little sharper. And so, we're just going to give the background that they give us. But it's interesting. I would have opted to maybe just blur it just a little more so it felt a little more in line with her. But overall, I felt like this was a really nice shot and looked really good. So yeah, what else did we notice? What about his glasses? Somebody was talking about those. Anybody remember that? If not, I'll
so it had like a speckle kind of look to it. I don't know if you can kind of see it.
Yeah, I'm waiting to
shot.
see if we can see it. So I
Yeah,
can pause.
there
it is.
Right there.
I'm sure he'll love that pause. But
Yeah.
yeah. So just it was kind of peeling off the finish on the glasses. So that was a little noticeable. First, I thought they were dirty, but we definitely cleaned them.
And so we kind of like talked about like maybe we need to have backup glasses because he wasn't reading anything and they weren't
he
sending a
didn't need to
return feed. So it
Right.
wasn't like he needed to actually like see anything that was happening in this particular shot.
Yeah, we also missed, it's kind of on his left, camera right here. The glasses aren't really pressed down on his ear there, so we could have kind of framed him up just a little better on that.
But I think it's worth noting it was 10 p.m.
Yeah, but that's no excuse.
Which is not an excuse at all, but I think it is worth noting, like, some of these things that I think we normally would have caught, like, potentially at least. It's like, it was definitely a little bit of, like, we all left and came back, and I ended up being late, not on purpose, of just not thinking about when I needed to show back up to get set up. But that ended up being useful, because our IFB packs were dying.
Yeah, we only had two battery. So like on just a traditional battery meter, you have it's a little digital battery and it has 1, 2, and 3. It has 2, and no matter what, we always try to run, or we always do run, a completely full pack. That way we know there's no room for error there. So yeah, you can cut.
Yeah, sure. Oh, nope, not.
Hold it to your face.
I'm trying to see if it can. It's so tiny and so shiny. Well.
Yep.
Anyhow, it's full. That indicator.
Yeah, so that actually pushed us. So we're sitting here. I'm the one who was getting the IFB pack ready. I noticed the battery level. We have completely run out of AA batteries. We hadn't used any in a while, so we gave Isaac a call. Isaac was on his way in, and passed a gas station that luckily had some. So he stopped off and grabbed some. But that kind of kicked us into overdrive of being like, all right.
Why are we dealing with this?
Why are we dealing with this?
Yep, this is a system that we need to figure out. And then just like everything else, Isaac took it head on and got it figured out. So we made some purchases. I'll let him kind of show those and explain.
So in case you don't know, there's multiple types of rechargeable batteries. Nickel metal hydride, NiMH. Those are the most common. We've been big Inaloop people for a while, but there's a lot of new brands out there. Tenergy is one of them. Comes pretty highly recommended from people on the internet. We don't have a ton of experience with these yet, and we'll get to why. But these are 2,800 milliamp hours instead of the 2,000 that you would find in Inaloops, which are priced more expensive than these. And so we got this whole big thing. We actually have 8 more of them also that we need to get a charger for. But then Morgan reminded me that they sell a dock for these IFB packs that we use. And not only do they sell a dock for them, but the dock, it basically you just put this little rechargeable battery pack in there that they sell. And what's cool about it too is you can take them and
you can charge them
charge
two different
just
ways.
the battery in there, or you can charge it inside of the IFB pack. So other than IFB, though, we have like a lot of TV remotes here because obviously a lot of TVs. And so it's useful to have just kind of AA's, AAA's ready to go, sitting around or ready to get quickly charged. And so we also bought a big old pack of just Amazon Basics AA's. It's like, hey, if all the power in the world is out, somehow we're still operating, I don't know in what universe that would make sense.
Yeah.
But if that's occurring, then we have some ability to kind of get going there. So
I love those packs, though. It looks, first of all, so good to have something you just dock. You got to really
it's an
press
intense dock. I don't know. Here,
it feels tactical when you do it. Like feels like you're putting a mag in something.
Nice.
So we can leave those on the other side charging all the time,
Right.
and we can swap in and out.
That
so
gives
if one
them
dies, we can go to the other one.
Right. It gives them a home,
yeah.
and it makes it where they're just always going to be charged.
And that's so we have the Sennheiser IFB packs. I'm not sure what the model is, but that's a Sennheiser.
This is a
proprietary
Sennheiser
charging.
L2015.
L2015.
Charging our Sennheiser EK IEM G4s.
Nice.
We've had some issues with not these. These are great. The other thing, never mind. The battery, the charger for this is just DC. We actually used an ATEM charger thing for like a kind of ATEM power supply. They want like $70 for their thing. You can spend $14 on Amazon, get any 12 volt. This isn't even a whole amp of power. It's 750 milliamps. So you can get a charger pretty cheap online. That'll do just fine.
Well, you crushed that, and we got that figured out. It was like a couple days later we had all that.
It was basically the morning after we ordered everything.
And it was perfectly in time for the live event that was on our last debrief that we talked about.
Or maybe on our next one. Who knows what order these go up in.
Only
so us.
One thing that we briefly went over, Morgan, but I want you to dive a little bit deeper on, was you mentioned, we're not really worried about his glasses wearing them because there's no return feed. Just briefly explain what the return feed is, what we would have done with it on the prompter that we typically have people look at, and then what's the process if he doesn't have it and he's just hearing them.
Yeah, for sure. So we were utilizing the LTN Network, which is a managed network service that a lot of television networks such as CNN, ABC, Fox utilize to get a feed from us. And what that allows them to do is just basically go and book times with us.
Yep.
And we already communicate to them the price of our studio and things like that. And there is a transmission cost with that. And so what that means is they're paying about $120, I think was the last rate I saw per hour to get a feed from us. So if they're going to send us a return, which they can, and the box that we have installed on our rack can receive a feed, they're going to pay transmission and receive. So that can get kind of expensive. Unlike a Zoom call where if we were on Zoom, everybody would see everybody's video and there's no added cost to that. This just does have an added cost. That's the only thing with that. Here's a shot of that box right there.
Nice.
Took a picture
with the LTN. You'll see the LTN logo there.
You can book us.
Right.
Just type in that number in the system,
Yeah.
F189. We'll send you a feed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this just allows us to have a really nice high quality feed into the studio there. And then for return audio, we're using telephone. A lot of television stations are still set up for telephone IFB because reporters out in the field will go out and basically just use their cell phone to call back into the station so that the producer can tell them, hey, you're up next, or whatever that may be, and so that they can hear the program. It also allows you to have, so there's like a shot of that there, the auto hybrid IP there. So we're using VoIP to do all of our telephone because we don't have an analog telephone system here at the studio. But again, that's what he's hearing in IFB, so that the talent in their studio can have a full conversation with him. Our system here is a dual line system. So we all, my rule of thumb is line 1 is their IFB for talent, and line 2 is their what they call their control room, their PL. And that's so that their director can talk to us back here and say, hey,
zoom out,
zoom in,
give them more headroom,
all that. And that ended up being a challenge on this shoot because we didn't have somebody that was listening to that full time. So in my previous work of television, we did these all the time. We did uplinks like this. I know Jim, done a ton of these with him. It's usually just one of us when it was at the television station doing all of this. So I had my AirPods in or whatever, and I am on the control room PL, and then we had a second phone that plugged in the IFB that I dialed in the IFB for talent, and I'm standing right there next to the camera. We're not keying it. We're not doing any of that, because in the television station, we just had a monitor wall. So we just put the graphic in the monitor wall, and that was it. And so here we have that extra layer because we have the control room, the Ultimat, and all that. And that causes a little bit of disconnection is what I've found, because we have all these separate roles that kind of have to, it becomes more like a filming day, I guess,
right.
is a way to describe
Well,
it.
like when CNN would say something like, hey, can you frame up this shot? The headroom's off, we need to bring that down or whatever. We're like relaying that.
Right.
Sometimes a little bit of a telephone game. For various reasons, but
well, we've never ever we've done these multiple times, but we've never like defined roles on that, because it's typically like everybody's about to leave and we get an email and it's like, can everybody turn around and be here at 7:30? We do this, and so we always just kind of show up and come back. Somebody does the lighting, and we all kind of get into it. But once it's time to go and to listen to PL and make the changes that they need, we're all in here, and we feel a lot more lax than we do on a shoot. So like I don't have my Unity turned on with my AirPods in, where I could hear the PL, be standing behind the camera and be ready, which is technically what we need to do. Everybody has to have their own role, and everybody has to be listening to the to CNN's PL, so that we're ready to do whatever they say whenever they say.
I also find it really interesting, and I think it's just maybe it depends on the person, right? The demographic. As we saw during COVID, everybody adapted to Zoom and things like that. So it really surprises me how this is still semi-utilized, right? You would think Zoom would take away all the business from LTN, because I think we would get a slightly better quality out of Zoom than LTN based on the compression ratio that's happening right now. But LTN is fully managed. There's somebody I could pick up the phone right now and call if we had any transmission problem, and they would fix it.
Turned off.
Yeah.
They always let us know.
Yeah, it would be like we would get an alert. So we have to let LTN know whenever we're making a change, because otherwise it's a fully managed service. So they'll let us know, hey, your system is down.
Now, we briefly mentioned return feed, so that like he hears return feed, and you said it gets more expensive if they decide to send a return feed. So when they do send us a return feed, which we have gotten from
Fox.
Fox
did it.
sent it. But typically we'll do Fox, News Nation, CNN. Those are like the three that we've worked with, but Fox is the one that sends it. But when we do that, with the video hub and with our capabilities, we can put that video on the teleprompter so that the talent that's on stage can be looking at the interviewer that they're talking to, instead of just looking at a camera and what feels like a radio show.
And you wouldn't want to show them like the feed from the television, right? From CNN.com or YouTube TV or anything like that, because of all the delay. I mean, we saw it here in the control room. It was substantially delayed, the broadcast feed versus, what he was hearing in his ear when he was communicating with the talent. So,
hey, do we have Isaac, do we have do we have the raw green of this shot right here that I've got up? Okay, can we cut to that? Okay, so one thing I just want to say about this, my favorite part about going on the news, the live part's fun. There's all these things that get to happen, but we're pretty dynamic here. So when we do like Unreal sets or any other kind of plate or anything, we're spending a lot of time on lighting the background properly and trying to get the most like even key by like getting the false color really dialed in. But with this, man, it takes 2 minutes. You get to put it up. It is the easiest thing to light because it's such a small, concentrated shot.
Right.
So I always, like, whenever it's like, oh, we're doing the news? Oh, dude, I'll do the lighting by myself. Don't even worry about it. You basically just crank it, and you get to make it as solid as possible. Now, we recently repainted, and things were a little bit different this time. But it is always kind of a relief getting it and, like, having it look really awesome. Because I remember... I don't think we ever did a debrief on a guy named Steve Cortez who will come in here. He's the one who's been on Fox, the most recent person to have been on Fox, I believe. And we were in the middle of rebuilding this entire thing. And we got an email from them, and we set up another studio using an Elgato pop-up green screen.
Sure did.
And I remember you being like, this looks amazing. What's going on? I'm like, dude, it's because it's so small.
So tight.
Yeah, you're able to get that perfect key. It's like, it's a cheat code. So
I will say, though, that Elgato was not the same as...
100%.
We love Elgato, so we're super fans, and it's a great thing. But it was different keying experience with that. And can we pull up... let's go back to him, and then we can just cut over to the final shot there so we can kind of bring that in. There you go. So that's kind of final shot. Now, I will say 2 things. One, I did a shadow side on him, so it's very faint. It's barely a shadow side, but on the right, we did give him just a little bit of shadow there. Because of the way we were doing such a broad light source off to his left, it's about a 12-foot by 12-foot light. That enters. Oh, there you go. So we jokingly call that the Giga. It's 2 Intelitech Megas diffused, and then in front of that, about a foot in front of it, is a Westcott 12 by 12 with like I think it's a 1 1/4 stop diffusion as well. Mm-hmm. And then we've just got a bounce. So you'll see also there's a bounce on the right side. So we're still getting some light there, but just a tiny bit of shadow. Now, news doesn't really want to have like some super dramatic shot, but we're kind of clamshelling him, but still we're letting that diffusion happen. And so if we go back to the final shot, please, composited. So you can see that, it just has a nice subtle softness to it. Now, one thing we did not do well on this that just got missed is we don't have a good rim light that's hitting him, especially on that shadow side.
Yeah.
So there is... I call it the magic marker outline. There's a little bit of a magic marker outline. Wait, hold on. Wait 1 second. Be patient with us. And then let me just push this button. And then, right here on this side. So there's just this right on that edge. I just wanted to draw. Right on that edge, there's just a little bit of an outline. But I felt like it was so subtle, and it was like, and going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that it was like, okay,
yeah.
we're good. And I think it doesn't. I think it really doesn't show. But that drives me crazy right there. So
that's one thing that we battle like on a regular basis, like in regular filming days when we are trying to do something really cinematic and really moody. You want that bright side, you want that shadow side, and so it's balancing that hair light over on the shadow side, and you have to really barn door it and really like close it off in like a really narrow space to light that shoulder, but not have that ruin the shadow side by hitting his face or his cheek or his neck or even the front of the shoulder. So that's one thing that can be kind of a battle sometimes, is like that marker outline can cause it looks terrible, and it can cause such a problem for us when we're really trying to dial it in and make it look cinematic. So that's a balance in lighting, and something that we're still working on. Like we nail it sometimes, but other times we're still frustrated with how it looks because we can't really lock it in, especially if we're doing like a live event where people are moving around. Then you gotta sort of have more of like a broad light, which we really haven't like experimented with as much. But when they're sitting down, it is a little bit easier to kind of like dial that light in and make it really narrow and hit that perfect spot.
For sure. One thing that's super important to know is almost every time we've done a news segment, that person is showing up minutes before it's time to go live. They are not. I don't know that we've really had a lot of lead time. So I don't know what the network tells them. Morgan, you may know, but it seems like they're showing up and it's like, okay, we got to go.
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes, I think,
right.
is what they're told.
Right. So, and for us on a filming day, sometimes we'll take an hour from the time they walk in to makeup to kind of getting to know them to getting them comfortable. You know, none of that. All that stuff is gone, and it's just like go, go, go. So that's an important thing too, is that you just don't have a ton of lead time, and frequently you don't even have a way to talk to the client. Like we didn't have a way to talk to him before he came.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
they kind of buffer the news. You know, the producer for that show is going to be the one point of contact for that personnel. Typically. And then I've found that government people tend to show up even closer to their hit time just because they're busy doing a bunch of other different things. You know?
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Now, one thing I noticed, I'm going to try to click on one of these things on Pro Presenter here. So if we could show this real quick, he's leaving here. But so here you can see those screens. One thing I realized, though, is he's sitting there. Of course, he's already off camera, walking off. But it made me realize, like, oh, man, we need to think through his experience because he doesn't know us, right? So, like, here we are in the control room. We've got a lot of things that we're doing and going on through there. But when it comes to his experience sitting in the studio, I don't know if this turns around and looks at the screens. I realized he doesn't know the name SociallyU. He doesn't know our names. Like he's just come in and come out, and we're not trying to build like the biggest connection with him or whatever. But at the same time, there you go. So it's like, oh man, we probably should have thought through like something like this is called SociallyU. Like I told him as he's leaving. So as we're finally like, okay, cool. We've had a good day and everything's great. There we go. Whoops, I clicked it too. I'll quit touching. But as we're leaving and exiting the building, that's when I was kind of telling him like, hey, by the way, this place is called SociallyU and you know, whatever. If we
I
can
heard
ever
you
help
say, you said like, and if you know anybody that needs videos,
right,
send them our way.
You know, I'm all consummate, always selling, always be selling. So yeah, but it was just a funny thing of like, oh right, he doesn't know. A driver drove him here and he got out of the car and left. So just thinking through like a brand experience of something we should do soon is sit down in the studio as if we're the talent, looking at what they would look at and think to ourselves like, well, what should we put here that we would really want them to see that helps us communicate, be excellent, love people, adapt and innovate kind of concepts to them. So anyway, but yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. Morgan, you're the magic trick around this. And so one of the videos I want us to do soon is just a video where you just walk through every step of here's what it takes to go live.
Yeah, we need to do that because like it is the funny part was you were in the process of house hunting that day. And so, and you had left early and it's Isaac, Tyler, Andre, and I all sitting here, and we got the email. And we all looked around, and I was like, well, I can come back. And Isaac was kind of like, yeah, me too. And Tyler was like, well, maybe me. And then we're kind of like all texting whether we can like come or stay or whatever in the group chat. But like it all hinged on like Morgan being like, yeah, I'm free.
Yeah, and I had no idea because we're walking through houses,
Yeah.
you know, doing all the open house stuff. And then I looked down and saw it, and I was like, oh, Jim.
Oh.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I wanted to do it so bad because like you can record and that's all fun, but like there's just a different energy around going live, and it is fun. It turns out, you know, you're live on national television, and sometimes there's political people who come in here and they talk about that, which is interesting. But the bridge had just collapsed, the ship had just hit it, so we're like, oh, this is huge. This is a cool moment to be able to do this. Like I'll always remember it.
Terrible moment.
Yeah. Sorry. A terrible moment in time, but a cool opportunity for us to have something that was that on top. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. That was a little dark, Jay. Way to go. But like the whole time we were down the street at my friend's house, and I'm like waiting on the text. I'm like, I was telling all my friends about it, and they were like, are you going to do it? I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. And then Morgan said yes, and I like out loud was like, yes, we're going.
Nice.
So yeah, it was awesome.
You know, so for me, I realized we should have some ties and just some neutral some kind of like default ties to how much space would that take up for us to have that. Although I don't know that I would have asked him to change his tie. He was very proud of it. It was like had airplanes on it, and like he was really like he picked this tie on purpose to come. So I would have first tried to work around it, and then had that as a backup plan. I do think the other thing that happened that was just interesting, because we don't do this all the time, we use comms all the time. So each of our stations, the stations we're talking to you on, are typically our stations that we're working from. And so we have mics, we have a comm system, all of that. We have our own PL. But I did find myself, just because we kind of got into it and it's like, and we're doing this, and then suddenly I realized, like, wait, I don't know which PL is if I talk down PL, is that latched to CNN, PL, or is that, like, what's going to happen when I click on that? It's all super obvious now. But in the moment, I found myself like just talking over the show the behind the scenes cam of our room here. But I found myself, just like getting up and being like, hey, blah, 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 instead of doing over comms. So that wasn't a good use of comms. And I could have asked a question, but in the moment, it just felt like, oh, I just need to solve this one answer or something.
It's really interesting to me because I know a lot of the industry lingo, and so like definitions of like PL and things like that just come second nature to me. And so now I'm like having to think like, okay, how can I better either teach the lingo or make it super clear that anybody could walk in and do it, right?
Right.
On like, especially the phones, because we just had it called Phone 1 and Phone 2. Now they're like called News IFB and News PL to help kind of distinguish what they are.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time that we went on television that you were here. It was because we had done something with Good Morning America where we used Zoom. This was pre-Morgan.
Yes.
And then we had LTN installed when Morgan was here because we had the mayor go on CNN and Fox after a terrible tragic event here. But I remember, Morgan, you sat down with a phone and you were like, this is Chattanooga on the bridge. And I just remember being like, oh, I would have had no idea what to do.
Well, and
I don't even know
the
what the
directors
is.
in CNN recognized my voice because I had done a bunch of these with Jim, in the past and things like that. And they're like, oh, hey, Morgan. So it's really nice to talk to them and catch up.
That's awesome.
So.
Yeah, way to go, Morgan. What a gift. But yeah, so that, and it is, like you said, it's obvious to you. I was pretty sure, but there was like just enough percent, like, I don't know, did we latch this together? I'm not sure. And I'm just going to ask, but that was just a funny, like, oh, right. I have all kinds of assumptions and man, I don't want to do it wrong.
Well, and we've talked about like a pre-meeting, right? Like a pre-production meeting, and we didn't do that on this at all.
That was because I was late.
Everything was kind of running a little behind, and yeah, it was just a lot to set up. I think, we're recording this a little bit after it happened, but I think we had just finished painting the wall.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like maybe this was the first thing we were filming on it.
It was definitely the first thing we were filming
Yeah, so
on
it was
we
like,
hadn't looked at it at all.
Yeah, so
it was that day.
Okay. Yeah, so we had a lot happening where it was just like, we're just trying to get this thing ready. And I don't know how we'll ever tell you about the wall, but we went through a massive paint process of changing the wall. We're still using Chromolite paint, but just did a whole bunch of experiments and a lot of issues went through that. So I don't know if we'll ever make that video, but we've learned a lot about painting with Chromolite and just green screen wall in general. We had a massive project that was, we've painted that wall, it seems like 200 times. It's probably been like 7, but it was a bunch.
Well, and to be clear, it's a lot of strategy of paint. Like, it's nothing.
Sure.
The paint itself is great. We recommend it a lot. It just was like a lot of like, okay, how should we paint this thing? And our wall, I don't know if we've talked about it before, but the way it's built, it's like there are some rough patches you got to get over. And
built it ourselves.
And so it's not prefabricated. And so there's some of that stuff that we have to work through that I think a traditional studio may not.
One of the things we do is we really pride ourselves on the client experience from the moment they walk in, the moment they leave. And this was just interesting because it's like, man, we have minutes, single digit, like just the shortest amount of time to get them makeup, get them in the chair, set up, IFB, microphone, all of that. We got to do that so fast. There's very little time to just give you a sense of comfort and encouragement. And some of the things that we've kind of really we feel like have set us apart from many other experiences. So that was interesting to figure out, how do we navigate this in this tiny little window where we can still go in and give them an A+ experience, but in seconds instead of in hours, kind of thing. That was interesting to do. I think everyone did an awesome job. I think he left here. I saw him taking some pictures with his cell phone of him on stage, showing the composited shot. So I think he really enjoyed it. I know CNN was happy. One other thing I do want us to have, which maybe we do, and I'm in management, so maybe I missed it, but it does seem like it'd be nice to have a cutout kind of shape of like, this is the CNN framing. I think we were doing something like that, but if not, I think we should use some of these other shots that we've done to just be kind of an outline of framing so that we could just do like a quick overlay, stick it on a media player or something like that and fade it in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that way we would already have the shot. For me, just so you know, if you're this deep in, I was telling the team, hey, let's make sure we have a pedestal tripod. Let's make sure that's set in a position where it's very easy for us to raise and lower it without having to touch the legs. And then I made sure we had a variable lens so that we could zoom in or out very quickly in case we needed to, reframe. Because many times you get that instruction moments before going live. And I don't want to see them, I don't want them to see some camera bouncing up all around as we're, all bumpy as we're trying to zoom in or out. So, I loved it. I thought it was a great shoot. Thanks, everybody, for coming in so late on that. And we were out before 11, so that was awesome. But, it was a great time. So
the most fun little anecdote. I've got two fun little anecdotes real quick I know we were trying to keep these shorter. Cammie she had been out and she was like, oh, I should stop by real quick. Maybe they're still live, and had come in essentially right as we're all about to walk out.
We were literally
we were packing up, walking
on.
out of the door.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, And it was unfortunate. And then also, I have found out a fun fact of what LTN stands for, because it's impossible to find this now. So this is a little fun trivia fact. Go ahead and comment down below what you think it is. But it used to be called Live Time Net. So thanks to Ian Tech on the Video Engineering Discord for that fun fact. But I was like, man, this has to stand for something at some point, but now it doesn't anymore. So it's the LTN Network somehow.
One last thing I'll say about that as we close this out is the way I found out. Jay mentioned Good Morning America. A number of years ago, in the middle of COVID, we got a chance to go live on Good Morning America. We did it through Zoom, but as we did it, I'm talking to the staff there, and they were like, hey, do you have LTN? Or they mentioned some other thing, and I'm like, I don't know what any of these things are as they're explaining them to me. And then, I'm like, I don't know. No, so I'm like Googling, trying to find it really quickly. So that's how we kind of popped into LTN. And at the time, I don't know what the price point is now, but it was around $4,000 to purchase the box. It's kind of a one-time deal. And then those numbers that Morgan was saying, the 100 and whatever an hour, or whatever it is, that's what LTN is charging CNN. So that's not our rate. That's the rate that they're providing. And then on our side, I didn't know how to price it either. And so, if that's something, if you have an opportunity to go on the news or anything like that, send us a message. I'd be happy to discuss with you offline just some of our pricing of what we're doing. It's not a ton of money. It's really great exposure, and it's really good, I think, for our clientele to see that we can do that. It brings a lot of legitimacy of the type of studio we are, but I think there probably was a time where that was like a real moneymaker to do this. But now, like Morgan said, so many are just over Zoom or something like that it's like, this is fine. So, but there are definitely the times when, especially more prime time type of shows, they want it to have that little extra something. That's something we can provide.
Okay, it's funny because when you mentioned the legitimizing aspect of the studio, it's so funny because we do such cool stuff with Unreal Engine, and we, using the Ultimate and keying out the green and creating these environments. And whenever I explain that to people, I get this, what? But then I go, CNN. Oh, we're going on CNN. Oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing.
Wow.
What? And then it's like, oh, you really do work at a studio. And it's like, what? Yeah, it's not even, it's not even a blip on the radar.
6-camera Unreal Engine, virtual production.
So it's just funny when people who don't understand the industry, they're like, "Oh, cool, I don't understand," and then you say CNN, and they're like, "Wow, amazing."
It's true. Yeah. It's true. Well, hope you've learned some things out of this. For me, thinking about safety just from an elderly perspective, making sure we have things clean from there, green ties and their options, and if you are green screening. The idea of putting something behind that, I felt pretty proud of coming up with that in the moment, and all the way down to just simple things like how do you take care of your batteries, us needing to do a pre-job briefing where we would have talked through exactly how PL and comms would have worked, would have saved a little bumpiness there. And just some general framing guidelines. You could go back in this video and take a screenshot of how we had Mr. Hall framed up. Use that. At some point, he kind of leaned over to the side, so get it when he's more straight up and down. But and then just thinking through even things like chair and chair height. Hopefully, all that stuff is stuff you can take into your production. And if you're interested in more about LTN, I'm sure we're not like an affiliate or anything, but you could definitely reach out to them. I would say the box has kind of paid for itself, but more so in the sense that, like I said, it's given us a vehicle to express our legitimacy. And we've certainly learned a lot from CNN and Fox and other players and watching how they do their shows and listening to how they announce things over PL. Things like that have been super helpful for us as we're learning too. So thanks for being on this journey with us, and keep making your studio as awesome as you can. Can't wait to share more of what all we're up to.